Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. Have you ever watched the movie The Exorcism of Emily Rose? If you have, you know it's terrifying. Surprise, surprise, it's actually based on a true story. However, the girl in the real story is not named Emily Rose. She's Anneliese Michel, also known as Anneliese Michel, which is a German nickname for the name Elizabeth. And this girl, in my opinion, was failed by the system and most importantly failed by her parents because they presumed she was possessed by demons when in reality she was mentally ill. Anneliese Michel was born on 21st September 1952 in the small Bavarian town of Leibelfing, West Germany. So she was a Virgo like me. She was the eldest of four daughters of Joseph and Anna Michel, a deeply Roman Catholic family who later moved to Klingenberg am Main. Her father owned a sawmill and worked as a master carpenter, providing a modest but comfortable life. Her mother had completed both high school and business school, which was unusual for rural women of her time. That being said, the Michels were uneducated peasants. They were disciplined, middle class, and intensely religious. But the family carried tragedy. Before Anneliese was 4, an older sister born in 1948 had died, which was an early loss that seemed to deepen the parents' faith and sense of guilt. Religious duty, obedience, and repentance shaped the Michel household. Anneliese grew up devout. She attended Mass regularly, prayed daily, and practiced small acts of self-denial, sometimes sleeping on the floor as penance. Friends described her as bright, kind, and religious, but already serious beyond her years. In 1968, at age 16, Anneliese suffered her first severe seizure. Doctors diagnosed temporal lobe epilepsy, a condition affecting emotional regulation and sometimes triggering intense religious experiences. Over the next few years, she was prescribed anticonvulsive medication and received psychiatric care, but her symptoms expanded. She grew depressed, began hearing voices, and claimed to see dark faces or quote-unquote devilish figures. Despite treatment, her condition did not improve. By her early 20s, she was struggling with both physical seizures and deep spiritual distress. She sometimes believed that she was damned and begged for prayers to save her soul. As time passed, her behavior grew alarming, even to those close to her. She developed a fear of holy places and objects. For example, she couldn't enter chapels, recoiled from crucifix, and refused holy water. She wrote to her priest, quote-unquote, "I am nothing. Everything about me is vanity. What should I do? You pray for me." She spoke of atoning for others, wanting to suffer for the sins of quote-unquote fallen priests and the youth of Germany. Her doctors viewed her as psychotic, but her family saw what was happening to her as a spiritual warfare. When Der Spiegel later examined the case, it found that the Michel home was more than religious. It was emotionally closed and repressive. The psychiatrist, Dr. Cole, who evaluated her, noted what he called a quote-unquote psychogenic epileptic personality structure, suggesting that her illness reflected not only biology but also family pressures. He even hinted at unconscious conflict towards her father, a tension she could never express in a house built on obedience. I will discuss this in more details later. I will share my opinion on this and its connection to the whole case. Why was she developing this illness, in my opinion? Locally, the Michels were considered outsiders even among Catholics. Neighbors described them as part of pious crackpot circles. devout lay groups that distrusted modern reforms of the church and sought mystical experiences and Marian visions. One woman from their religious network named Thea Hine organized trips to unapproved operation sites like San Damiano in Italy. On one trip, she noticed Anneli had a sense of guilt, and she also noticed distress in her and introduced her to priests sympathetic to exorcism. That connection would prove fatal. Through these groups, Anneliese was surrounded by people who reinforced her beliefs that her suffering had a divine cause. As Der Spiegel put it, quote unquote, an interplay developed in which Anneliese Michel was practically offered the contents of her psychotic mental disorder, which she was only too willing to accept and develop further. In other words, her surroundings gave her illness a religious script. By 1974, she was studying education and theology, hoping to become a teacher. She was ambitious, but was also terrified of being labeled mentally ill because of her condition. She was fearing it would destroy her career, so she began hiding her symptoms and leaning more on faith. Her doctors recorded a quote-unquote symptom shift. The seizures grew less frequent, but her religious delusions and hallucinations increased. Her suffering moved from body to mind and from medicine to mysticism. In 1975, her family and parish priest by the name of Ernest Alt believed medicine had failed. Alt wrote to Bishop Joseph Stengel of Würzburg, claiming Anneliese didn't look like an epileptic and was showing signs of possession. The bishop sought advice from Jesuit Father Adolf Rudwig, I think it's pronounced, an elderly expert on exorcism who agreed that a ritual was warranted. They were I'm sorry to say this, but they were stupid. They were very ignorant people, and they were responsible for the death of this girl. I mean, they were partly responsible of it, so in my opinion, allegedly. In August 1975, Bishop Stengel authorized first a quote-unquote small exorcism, then the full Roman ritual of exorcism, assigning Father Arnold Reintz to assist. From September 1975 to June 1976, they performed at least 67 sessions, some lasting hours, many recorded on tape.
Ich spreche das so, dass ich in dem Wald rein bin. Ich trag dir die Rotznase noch so lang, bis es lebt wird. Saublöde Wein. Für uns geht's kein Zurück. Sie in alle Ewigkeit.
Sag mir den Namen.
Ich, der Judas und der Nero, der Kain und der Hitler. Fünfst immer.
Her voice alternated between her own and guttural growls. She claimed to speak as Lucifer, Judas, Nero, and Hitler, details that shocked the public later, but as the Spiegel noted, only show how her imagination mixed theology with 20th century trauma. During these months, Anneliese's body gave out. She stopped eating, believing she must not take food because the quote-unquote demons forbade it. She suffered broken knees from endless kneeling, could barely stand, and weighed only 31 kilos or 70 pounds. On July 1st of 1976, she passed away at her home in Klingenberg. The autopsy was clear: malnutrition, dehydration, and pneumonia. Pathologist Dr. Schultz stated that a healthy person could have survived the infection, but her body was just too weak. She didn't have any strength left in her. After her death, the state charged her parents and two priests with negligent homicide, not for believing in demons, but for letting her starve. At trial in 1978, their lawyers argued that they had acted under religious freedom protected by German law. The prosecution requested only fines, which I don't understand why, And the court sentenced all four to 6 months imprisonment, suspended plus 3 years probation. To Der Spiegel, the article, I will link it down below in the description so you can read it. It's very good. It will give you a better perspective of what actually happened to her. According to the article, this was a moral failure. It wasn't fanaticism that killed Elise, the journalist wrote, but obedience. A family and church so determined to preserve tradition that they prayed her to death. Her case led the Catholic Church in Germany to tighten exorcism regulations and require medical consultation before any ritual ever takes place. Her life inspired the 2005 film The Exorcism of Emily Rose, which I mentioned in the very beginning, and countless other documentaries. But the real woman behind the myth was neither a saint nor a spectacle. She was a devout, intelligent student trapped between two worlds. A medical system that couldn't heal her, and the faith that saw her agony as sacred. In my opinion, the movie is nothing compared to the real story. The real story is more terrifying than the movie. She died. This is not a character from a horror film that didn't exist. She actually did exist and experienced all these tragedies. She had a very short life. She was so young, and a life filled of fear and fake beliefs. I recently watched the series Breaking Bad, and Jesse, one of the main characters, was singing this song all the time. It was fallacies, fallacies. And that's what Annelise's life was based on, fallacies. There's also this theory that I want to touch upon before we wrap this up. I also thought of this myself, but I was surprised to find out that other people have considered this theory to be real as well. And it's the theory that Annelise's collapse wasn't only illness or possession, or both, but the product of silence and hidden abuse, maybe even sexual abuse. People who knew her later said that she began to neglect hygiene. She was smelling bad and she was withdrawn, which are signs sometimes seen in survivors of deep trauma who either cannot or dare not speak. And I think she was afraid of speaking up for herself, for what was done to her mentally and physically. I even think that her father maybe abused her. If that was the case, that makes her story even worse. What is certain is that whether from illness, repression, or abuse, Anneliese was trapped in a world that never let her pain be named, and that silence helped kill her. What is your opinion of the case? Let me know in the comments below. Like this video if you liked it. Share it if you think it's worth sharing. This is a quote I stole from Stephanie Harlow. And subscribe, please. See you in my next one. Bye, guys.